Welcome to the Iron Edge. We are back after our extended hiatus, and I am extremely excited to welcome Mr. Andrew Burton to the podcast. Andrew, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time out of your day.
Thanks for having me, Ken. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, we are pretty close to the Arnold. We're essentially days away almost. How do you feel? And then we'll get into the rest of everything.
I'm nervous. I mean, how can you not be with this kind of jump? I'm just trying not to get hurt, trying to hit all my weights, and still trying to enjoy the process all along the way. So I'm finally off of work, so I can rest a little bit leading up to the contest and try to get some sleep and do quality things like eat well, rest, and
Mhm.
get out and walk and do the things that I like to do.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So with this relaunch of the Iron Edge, we are sort of taking a little bit of a different approach. We're talking more about like the pressures of life, feeding that into training, you know, how it relates to work, sport, and then yourself as a whole and all that sort of stuff. And one of the questions that I came up with to start the podcast was I wanted to ask every guest, who is Andrew right now? Like, if you had to sum yourself up, who is Andrew?
Andrew's a family man, and everything else comes second. I'm married to my wife Taylor. We've been married for like 10 years or more. We've been dating even longer. She was my first girlfriend. She was my first everything. So at the core, I'm a family man, and secondary, I'm a firefighter, and secondary to that, I'm a strongman. An athlete is the way that I look at it. I'm an athlete
Mhm.
2 times. My job requires me to be an athlete, and my hobby requires me to be an athlete. So that's Andrew at his core.
With work, so when did you? How long have you been a firefighter now? Like,
Almost
I'm trying
15
to think.
years.
15 years. Was that something you always wanted to do?
I always wanted to be in public service. Initially, thought about being a police officer. I think just because I'd been around more times or been around more police officers than I've been around firemen. Firemen are notoriously secretive and
Okay.
they tend to hide, especially from the public. So you don't tend to catch them
Mhm.
out, doing whatever. But you find police officers everywhere, right? They're in schools,
Mhm.
they're doing security and things at places that need security. So, like, I had jobs. I worked at a pizza place for a long time, and we had a constable that would come up and he would run security for us essentially as we closed down for the night. And his job was just to make sure nobody came in and robbed the store while we were getting all the money out of the safe.
Yeah. Now, was that with the public service stuff? Like, where did that stem from? Because obviously, most people aren't that selfless. If we're honest.
You know, I mean, I'm going to caveat into this a little bit. We'll push back to what got me into public service, but public service members aren't as selfless as you. We love adrenaline and we crave adrenaline, and this is one of the most legal ways to get that adrenaline dump. A lot of us are intelligent but uneducated, and I think that's a fair statement to say that a lot of us didn't want to go to college.
Okay.
And so, this is a good way to make a living, support a family, have a career that you can be respected for and respect yourself for without going to college, without going and getting an engineering degree, without becoming a doctor. This is for us. This is for the people who like to drag their knuckles. This is for the people who like to work with their bodies. And for me specifically, it's because I like to work with my mind too. That's why gravitated towards firefighting, because I didn't want to just be stuck in a cubicle. I wanted to be out and about. I wanted to do things that mattered, and I wanted to use my body to essentially fund my lifestyle.
Mhm.
And the way I got into public service probably stems from my time in the Boy Scouts. I spent, man, 15 plus years. I can't even think. I started at the lowest level of Cub Scouts as just a little kid. And the point of the Boy Scouts is to get to the top tier, you become an Eagle Scout. And they essentially became my role models. I didn't grow up with a father around. So my mom put me in the Boy Scouts to be around male role models,
Mhm.
to try to, help direct me in a good direction, because like, I love my mom, but she didn't have the manly qualities that you would look for in a man. And
Yeah.
so she needed to find people who could help me become the man that I wanted to be. So Boy Scouts became a big part of my life. I spent a lot of my time outside, which I was already just somebody who loved being in the woods, loved being out and about. But at the core of the Boy Scouts, you have service to others. And
Mhm.
so that became a very constant thing for me to do. And it was something as simple as collecting canned food for a canned food drive for the local food pantry. It became going to parks and fixing a park bench because the city wasn't going to do it. It became uh, later in my career, I say career, later in my time in the Boy Scouts, uh, I was really big into environmental protection and things of that nature. And there were some very specific awards you could get from the Boy Scouts if you did really intensive eco-friendly type uh, projects. And so
Mhm.
I worked towards getting some of those at one point whenever I was a little bit older in the Scouts, and I had more disposable income and a little bit extra time. But that was just a pet project for me. I didn't actually end up getting any award for it, and which is fine. I mean, you learn at a young age, especially in the Boy Scouts, that you could put in all the effort in the world, but you still may not get
Yeah.
the reward. You may not get
Get the payoff.
yeah. So, and I think it was good for me. It put me around a lot of people I respect to this day and are the male role models of my youth. So I'm very grateful to what the Boy Scouts provided me. I ended up getting my Eagle Scout. I've gotten the highest honors that you can get in this. There's a secondary, I'm going to call it a society in the Boy Scouts called the Order of the Arrow, who were the honored campers, the people who were the most selfless, the most involved, who showed up to everything, because no, we didn't get paid for
Yeah.
anything. So, so they like to provide extra status to those people. And so I became a visual honor member, which is the top level of that organization that you can get into. It's something I'm very proud of.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from a responsibility standpoint and like a, personal responsibility, it all stemmed pretty early for you. And then obviously it makes a hell of a lot of sense for what you're doing now.
It did. I had jobs since I was as young as I can remember. And I mean, still kid jobs. Somebody needs their plants mulched. You're going to call the 8-year-old who has a mom who's well below the poverty line,
Yeah.
and probably not going to have to pay them a whole bunch. That's fine. But
Yeah, I get it.
yeah, I created a situation in the city that I lived in where I was known as reliable for that type of work. And so by the time I became an adult, that was the substantial part of my income was doing
Mm.
odd jobs and things around town. So word of mouth spread that I would work cheap, and I would do well. So I worked on horse ranches. I've worked for farmers. I've baled hay. I worked in a butter factory at one point. Done tons of odd jobs. I've worked for an electrician. Worked for a roofer.
Damn, dude.
Yeah. So I mean,
You've done it all.
we had to make ends meet. I was terrible at
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
And so a jack of all trades, but a master of none.
hmm The dude, you know that there's like another, like a following part of
Oh
that
no,
thing.
I don't.
Yeah, but it's like I can't remember.
It's
I,
probably
I
not
but
good.
it is good though. It's basically like Jack of all trades, master of none, and then it's like goes on about how it's better to be good at everything type of thing.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it. At least I can't remember it off the top of my head. Maybe I'm completely
We're going
wrong.
to look it up, and it's going to be the worst thing ever.
And yeah, I know.
You're the worst person for not knowing how to
I'm
do it.
like, ah,
I'll
crap.
be the master.
With coming from that, like obviously the responsibility from a young age, leading into responsibility as a firefighter. Um, how do you sort of like, what would the word be? Like when you view firefighting versus sport, obviously in your job there's very real consequences if you get it wrong. How do you feel like that has changed, like maybe approach to the sport and this approach to life?
Uh, well, the honest answer is that, man, what's a nice way to say this? It kills a part of you. There's a part of you
Mm,
that cares a lot about extraneous things, but whenever you get into these situations where your actions affect so many others in such negative or positive ways,
Yeah.
You start to learn how to tamp down the part of you that's worried about it. And what you'll find is that firefighters specifically, they're not real worried about how your day went,
Yeah.
but they are worried about you if you're in distress.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? We
Yeah. No,
we lose a
completely.
part of ourselves that because of the athletics, because of the time that we have to put into it, you lose the part that cares about the little things, I guess. So sometimes they kind of get wrapped up and they kind of get left behind. I know that I'm guilty of it just as much as any of the other firemen I've ever talked to or worked with do. So it's a part of us that we have to work on constantly. It's what makes us good athletes because we can push those little things. It's the way that we cope with stress. It's the reason we can do
Mm.
the job is because we're not so worried about the little things. Like I'm not worried about mowing the yard. I'm not worried about trimming the tree. I'm not worried about my check oil lights on. I've got bigger
Mhm.
fish to fry. Got to get to the gym. I've got to stay in shape. I've got to be ready for the next big one.
Yeah, and talking to staying in shape, like obviously I know I mean you're relatively new to strongman, which is makes this Arnold debut. I mean, this is the third Arnold you've been at. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, sir.
Fourth Arnold,
Well,
third,
fourth, yeah,
fourth,
fourth with the
fourth. The
this is
firefighter.
yeah.
Yeah, this will be the fourth. I mean, to not be funny, like that's pretty fucking meteoric. To go from winning the firefighter, then a second place in the open, then a first place in the open, and then pro stage. I mean, that's nothing to fucking to down call. So like, I know your athletic background has been pretty extensive as well. Before strongman. So where did that start as well? Like, was that Boy Scouts as well? Did that start the athlete background, and then or where did that all come from, type of thing?
I would say it probably wasn't Boy Scouts. I think middle school is when we started lifting weights, so that had been around
Yeah.
that 13-year-old range. And
Did you play football? Being
I
from
did.
Texas?
It's
Yeah.
Texas. You can't be in a program, an athletic program, without being a football player. So, but I will caveat all that with too. I did not enjoy football. I'm not a good football
Okay.
player. I don't even enjoy watching it. I really didn't even know the rules, and the coaches were
Mm.
terrible about making sure that you knew what you were supposed to do and what you weren't supposed to do. And then I was terrible about learning the plays and executing because I just didn't care. I was waiting for the
Yeah.
powerlifting season to start. That's all I cared about is powerlifting and track whenever I was in school. But in middle school, we started lifting weights in that first off season, and I was the first athlete to hit like a 315 squat and a 225 bench. So I was doing that at 13 years old. Terrible
Wow.
form. Can't believe I didn't blow my back out.
Yeah.
Uh, but against all odds, I get to high school. In those first couple of years, we had a coach, Coach McCaslin. I wish I could remember what degree he had, but I actually really think he was well overqualified to be a high school coach. He should have been a college level coach, but we were really fortunate to have him. And he taught us a lot about weightlifting. He taught us a lot about programming, and he programmed for us that first year we were there for our powerlifting program. He wasn't even our coach. We had another coach, but our coach was obviously very grateful for the help. And
Hmm.
Coach McCasson would come in and he would take on real big challenges every month. So, like I remember specifically, he was working towards doing 100 pull-ups unbroken, which I don't think he ever met
Holy
that goal
shit.
because that was a huge goal to hit. And
Yeah.
he worked towards it. I remember for months, and it was fun to watch. It was interesting, and I think it did help develop our mentality on the way that we looked at
Hmm.
fitness and the way that we programmed and the way we did things. Because by the time we were juniors in high school, we were doing all the programming for the upcomers, and we were doing our own
Okay.
programming for powerlifting. Now we had a lot of things wrong. Don't get me wrong; like we were not that good at it, but we were good enough to qualify for state. For most of us, our team was very active in the state meet in Texas, and we were really strong. But my freshman year, I had my first knee surgery that was stemmed from football. Had a broken patella, and it caused a lot of damage within my knee. Something I've been living with since I was 14. And the surgery didn't go all that great. I have a lot of nerve pain, and I have a giant nerve cluster that's basically dead in that knee, and then no muscle along the outside edge of it. So if it ever gets hit, it hurts so badly,
Mm.
and there's no patella there to protect it. I lost a couple pieces of patella, So I didn't get to powerlift my freshman year, but every year after I powerlifted and went to the state meet. My senior
Okay.
year, I thought I was actually going to podium. Ended up getting disqualified on my bench press. I locked out 515 all three times, but I locked it out an even. Yeah, one of those stupid
Fuck,
powerlifting
dude.
rules.
Yeah.
You can't lock out uneven. So I have one arm that's always been just a tad bit slower on the bench, and so I got called every time from the person behind me and the person to my right. So I got
How
disqualified
old
for
how
that.
old were you at five for a 515 bench? Like 18, 17, 18?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I stopped benching after that. Couldn't stand bench. Still can't.
Me too.
They
Not
kind of
not my favorite.
they kind of killed my soul on that one too. So, but I also love track and field. I did shot put and discus, and then I was sometimes they would come and get me to do the sprints. It was
Okay.
just fast enough to be just ahead of the last place person usually on the sprints, so they would come and get me if we had somebody not show up, and that was always fun.
Okay.
I wanted the pole vault, but they wouldn't let me do that.
I don't even want to think about you doing pole vault.
I was senior year. I was 275 pounds.
Yeah, I graduated at 260.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and then did you do cross and it so you trained CrossFit, didn't you?
I did for years.
Yeah.
Utilized it as a way to get into the fire service. So I left high school, went to the fire academy, went to my EMT academy, and amongst all that, I was trying to keep myself in very good shape. When I got
Hmm.
done with the academies, I went straight into trying to find jobs with departments, and part of that requirement is a physical agility test. And CrossFit seemed to have the greatest translation over to what they needed to see in those tests. And during that time period, I used to have this memorized. I took like 70 tests in 3 years, 70 different
Holy
departments. Some of them were
shit.
multiple times. It took me 3 years to find a fire department job. And really, it just kind of fell into this category of, of who you know. And I didn't know anybody in the fire service.
So how did that affect you then mentally then from a
Well,
perspective of okay, you've gone to the academies, you've done all this stuff, and now you're sort of knocking your head against the wall trying to find something.
yeah, it was a terrible time for that. Was in this time frame where there would be one job available and there'd be hundreds of us show up to take these
Hmm.
tests. And I could absolutely demolish the physical agility test. Generally, I say generally, in many of those cases, I was setting course records for fastest time for their events. And then, but my test taking ability is not the best. We kind of, circle back to school's
Mm.
never my thing. Uh, I know it. I'm not a dummy, but I don't enjoy taking tests. I don't like regurgitating
Yeah.
information for fun. I don't like doing it for people. And if I want to regurgitate information, it's because it's information that I want to regurgitate. So
Hmm.
the testing process was tough. And I was also a kid. They're looking for some older people. They're looking for experience. They're hiring one person. They're usually a retirement that they had in their department, and they don't want to fill it with a kid. And I get
Yeah.
that. I get that now more than I ever did back then. But it was just a really bad time for that. And it was mentally taxing. But fortunately, I have a different mentality than I think than most people do on when I'm not enough. And so instead of just being down on myself, I was seeking out other opportunities to get other certifications, to volunteer for volunteer fire departments, and to put my name into the hat for all this stuff. So eventually that paid off. I became a hazmat I got a hazmat tech certification from Teaks. I did some scuba stuff, got scuba certified, something I've always enjoyed water. And so I wanted to do that and maybe be on a dive team somewhere. So I didn't just let it, stop me. I looked at going to paramedic school, which I ended up doing later in my career once I got a full time job. But I really feel like it shows, a lot about a person whenever you don't just go, well, it's everybody else, and not me.
Hmm.
So I wanted to seek out those opportunities and not just be a victim of the opportunities that were there. And I knew eventually it would
Yeah.
change. I'm
How
still
old were you when you were in that period looking for jobs?
that 18 to 21 time.
Oh, so okay. So then that's perfect. Because like that leads me to this question. Then, where do you think that mindset came from? Because for a quote unquote typical 18 to 20-year-old, 18 to 21, 20, however 22, that mindset isn't really common. I feel, especially not now. Maybe like when I was younger, there was a bit more of it. Because I don't think we're that far apart in age.
I'm about to be
Um,
34.
but okay, I'm 38 this year, so okay.
Yeah, I mean, dude, in that 5 year period, that's
Oh, I know.
at this age now,
Uh,
5 years is nothing, right?
yeah, but I feel like it's that's not common. So where do you think that developed from?
That develops from the hardships of just being a person that was jumping job to job, never qualified for what he was for what he was doing, and liking, I guess, to learn the things that I enjoyed. I don't know. I don't know how you find out how young people's mentalities are made. I feel like my mom probably had a part in that.
Hmm.
She's a pretty she's pretty stubborn person whenever it comes to that kind of stuff. If she's not qualified for it, she's going to find out how to get there. She's not going to blame others for what she lacks. So I got to see that firsthand with them, and then a lot of the people in the Boy Scouts had trade jobs, and the way that a lot of the things happen in the Boy Scouts, I would say probably push my mentality towards that too. That if
Hmm.
you're not good enough for it at the moment, that you might be later, and you just had to keep working towards that ends and not just give up and not be down on yourself. There was just no. I don't think I ever saw any kind of person win with that mentality. I guess that's a good way to put it. And
Yeah,
so I
and I
didn't.
think that's. I mean, I fully agree with you. I think that that's something that is drastically lacking these days. It's like if you get told no, there's so many people who are just like, "Oh fuck, okay,
It's what I do
okay,
with firemen.
yeah,
When I get new firemen, I always find something to tell them that they're absolute garbage at, and it's a test. Like the fire department, everything's
mhm,
a test. You have an opportunity. I get to tell you you're garbage at something, which is fun for me, uh, and then you get to decide how you're going to handle it. And you get a lot of reactions from these kiddos, man, that are like, "Well, I didn't know, I didn't know." Well, that's why I'm telling you. It's because you
yeah,
don't know, and I want you to know. And I don't want you to wait on me to tell you because all this information is publicly available. YouTube is one of the simplest things to use to
mhm,
start stuff up. And I started my career in a department where I made $18,000 a year. We ran 3 to 4,000 calls a year, and 80% of it was fire. And I had to learn on the go. And after the first 6 months there, I became the officer and was in charge of keeping another 18-year-old kid alive through our shift.
wow,
So I don't want to hear it. Like I spent 5 years training kids to be firemen. You can do it
do
too.
y- yeah, do you? And obviously, everyone who comes in new is definitely got something to work on. Will you find something where it's maybe they're not terrible, terrible, but it's like it's a little bit behind, and they're like just something that
Absolutely.
we're like I just want to test them and I want to see how they react versus
Yeah.
just let them go.
Easiest one to do is any new firefighter is going to be terrible at ladders. Absolutely going to be terrible at throwing
Really?
ladders because ladders requires practice. It requires discipline and it requires some monotonous training. And
Mm,
what generally happens with those young guys is they get out of the academy and they start going to do jobs and they don't have to throw ladders for 6 months. They don't have to throw ladders for a year while they're trying to find a job. And then when they get on, they're more worried about cleaning the station and they're more worried about looking busy and they're more worried about all this other stuff. But what I want them to do is I want them to put their gear on. I want them to throw a ladder. And I want them to ask why it's so hard to get this 35-foot ladder up by yourself, or why a 24-foot ladder needs to get thrown upside down first and then turned over, or how do I put a
mm,
ladder up to save somebody. I want them to ask those questions, but I want them to get there on their own. I don't want to have to be the one that's standing behind them, whipping them in the back. I'm not your mom. I'm not your dad. I'm your coworker. Like, and my job is to get you to the call. Your job is to be proficient at the other parts. So
mm.
anything that you're not proficient in and I have to take over for you, that just adds to my job. And I'm not being paid extra for that.
Yeah,
You're
no,
being
it
paid
makes
for your
sense.
job. I expect you to be able to do
I mean, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Do you
it.
feel? Do you feel like that part of that responsibility and part of that sort of like mindset has led you to where you are now, like with Strongman coming in? Like that same mindset of okay, I'm not good at this,
Yeah, I'm going to
and
get
then
better.
figuring it out.
Yeah, it's discipline.
Yeah.
At its core. I'm disciplined. When I find things that I'm bad at, I do them. and I find ways to train through them. And when I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, I either reach out to somebody who is, or I use the internet to find out what I need to find out.
Hmm.
I remember, I think the first thing I ever found in Strongman that I just was really bad at was an axle cleaning press. It ended up being one of my better events now. It just took time to figure out because I didn't understand the over under hand placement. I
Hmm.
didn't understand how they were putting on their belly or where or why. And the first contest I ever did with an axle cleaning press was really uncomfortable. I even thought one of the guys that was there warming up for that contest was laughing at me, and it made me feel really like explosive because I got really
Hmm.
mad at that dude. And it ended up just being it ended up just being me being really unfairly cognizant of what's going on around me. He was having a conversation I wasn't a part of, and it just happened to be that he started laughing at a time that I thought was inappropriate. So, but whenever I left that contest, I went and worked on the things that I need to work on, and then now when it comes to axle clean press, when I'm not tearing my bicep off my arms, I'm actually one of the better ones at it.
I didn't want to raise it. I didn't want to raise the point. I mean, been there, done that. Like,
Yep,
I don't know. Yeah.
on there. Yep, there she is.
Yep. Yep. So, talking of discipline, I feel like there's a sort of like a quiet side of discipline as well, like the daily parts of it. Like, what's your take on that? Like, what's your take? I mean, obviously, you probably have that from everything you're doing, whether it's firefighter, sport, family side of stuff. There has to be a discipline essentially to balance your responsibilities because you've got a hell of a lot of them.
And I mean, I think for people, athletes, especially high level athletes, like things start to slip under the rug when you get into preps because you're single mindedly thinking about lifting weights. You're single mindedly thinking about how you're going to perform at a contest. You're thinking about what you're going to eat next and what you're going to eat.
Mhm.
So when it comes to that stuff, I really feel like you have to make a list, check it off at the end of
Yep.
the day. So like my morning starts with what do I need to do today? What is mandatory, what is optional, and I like to write those things down. And I also like to plan out a week in advance. I do that with my, weightlifting. I do that with my food, and I find that taking all those little things off the mind, opens you up to be more disciplined with the other things because the other things I do during the week too are a lot of recovery based movements. And then when I go to work, I'm very disciplined on when I get to work, I check my target solutions to make sure I don't have anything that's due in the next week. I like to check and make sure that those other guys are doing their trainings too. And I check my trucks off real well every time I get there. That's all discipline. And and then I like to do some sort of reading on the fire service. I like to read a lot about line of duty deaths that are new and come out and the reasons why and the rulings on those. And I like to share those with my crew. And so that is part of my regiment. All the stuff
Mm.
I've built over years of just what works for me and what works for my crew. As far as my family goes, the discipline to come into the house, clean the house, do your part. I take care of all my own laundry. My wife takes care of all of hers. Well, we share chores. We do what we can. But when I get in these preps, sometimes that stuff kind of falls off, and it shouldn't all
Mhm.
fall on her. So that's where those lists come into play, and just being a good husband is discipline. So discipline is
Yeah.
it's either in you or it's not. And I don't necessarily believe like I made this T-shirt, and I really do believe this saying: some things can't be trained. And I feel like discipline, motivation, all that stuff kind of falls in that category. It's not something that you can develop in a way, but you can act on it better.
Mhm.
So some people just are, and some people just aren't. I think that's just become a fact of life. I've met so many
Well,
people in my life, and
yeah, like I feel like consistency. I feel like if you can be consistent, then it almost like takes it doesn't take the place of discipline, but it maybe makes up for like that shortfall. But I also feel like uh there's almost like there's like a piece of consistency that's misunderstood by certain people, if that makes any sense. Like, do you have any like what's your thought on that on that sort of
man,
take?
start getting into people, you're gonna get me going. Uh, man, people miss the little things. I've said this a lot in my life. The little things matter, and the little things can be as simple as drinking enough water in a day. It can be
Mhm.
I'm going to throw out some other ones. This is going to be your people are going to be like, well, this guy's insane. I am. I'm a fireman. Uh, Cleaning your toilet out, for getting all your poop stains out of your toilet, like before you have a heart attack and a bunch of firemen have to come and drag you out of your bathroom and are disgusted by what they see. Keeping your house clean, uh, doing your laundry. If I think about athletes, I think about people who don't wash their stuff, like their gear and all that stuff, and they smell. I'm like, there's ways to handle that stuff, but it's these little things that
Mhm.
add up over time. And if you're taking care of the little things, the big things just become so much smaller.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hell of a way to look at it because I feel like as an athlete, especially in a prep, it's like there's so just everything just melts together. And it's like, I mean, I'm definitely guilty of it when, competing and getting ready for a show where it's like, I don't fucking care about all this shit. It only, strongman's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
And that's when like people have asked me, my wife's asked me, like, oh, would you compete again? And I'm like, there's part of me that wants to. I mean, hell, we talked about it at OSG last year.
Yeah.
And there's part of me that wants to, but there's also that part of me that is super cognizant that of how I am. I should say how I am as a human being in that moment or in that prep rather than the moment. Like it's not the best.
Athletes are terrible, terrible about that mentality in these preps. And I can only speak to the people who I've met and witnessed going through these things, but man, they just let so much stuff slide. And I really, really try not to be that person. And I can't. My job doesn't allow me to be that way. My wife doesn't allow me to be that way. The people in my life don't allow me to be that way. And I don't want to be that way. So I try real hard not to be that way.
Yeah. Do you feel like because moving on from that, or not moving on, but like expanding on that, like I feel like my communication broke down a little bit when I was in a prep and like almost like
You go quiet.
well yeah like less talkative but like not even from just this perspective of like I just didn't fucking care. Like I didn't, like I said, like I didn't care what your how your day is. I didn't care about anything. I mean, like, do you feel like there's like almost like a communication factor under stress, and like, and then how does that relate to work as well? Like, take the prep out of it. Like, obviously with a high level job and a high performing job that you're in high stress situations, like how, how does communication under the stressful situations sort of go for you?
It has its ups and downs. My wife is my rock. So when I need to talk, she's the person that's here. Pretty fortunate in the fire department that I work in that these guys are very understanding of people when we
Hmm.
need to talk. I feel like I'm one of the people who's open and generally available for anybody who needs to talk. And our crew, we debrief a lot. I believe a lot in debriefing a lot after calls, not to let it go too long. And if you can get everybody joking about stuff pretty quick,
Yeah.
then you know everybody's okay. But when everybody starts to get quiet, you know that there's a problem. And that's
Mm.
why the quietness becomes an issue because if I didn't have my wife, I would come home and there would be problems. I can guarantee you that if I didn't live with somebody, with my job, with the way that my brain works, if I came home and I just had blank walls or a dog or whatever was here, it wouldn't be good. And
Mm.
so I know that that's an issue that could arise. And I think my wife understands that too, that when I get quiet and I get withdrawn, that's because I'm in my own head. And my own head is a dark place, as most firemen or most paramedics are. And I like to conversate with her. I'm not generally a people person when it comes to outside that. I think strongman probably brings out the best in me because it is a hobby to me.
Mm.
And I know there's going to be some people that are a little pissed off here and that with me at the Arnold. And I'm sorry, but strongman has not paid the bills yet. And until it does, it is not a career. So, but it is a hobby, is something I very much enjoy. And it is a place where I get to unleash that aggression. And that is why I work out the way I do. It's why I was able to build into the athlete that I am because of the demons I carry around in my head. And my wife is the person that I try to talk to the most. And if I didn't do that, there would be major problems. So
Mm. It's almost like the unseen support system,
It is.
but it's like the most important part of it. Um, with the debriefs, not with work. Um, do you try and debrief a show like a competition?
Depends. Definitely debriefed the shawl that I did last year. It really depends. If it's a if there's a good dopamine hit from it, if there's like a lot of successes, a lot of personal best, uh,
Hmm.
and I've hit the goals that I've set out for myself, it's no problem. I can celebrate the wins. I can eat my ice cream cake. I can enjoy it. But after the shawl, like I didn't even get to do that. I had to, really. I went straight into surgery like a week later.
Hmm.
Had my bicep reattached, and then had to like really, you know, I really had to
Damn.
come to understand what had gone wrong, what I'd done, and also, have to be okay with that. I'll never have 100% answer, but I think that I was
Hmm.
dehydrated. I think that my bicep was already extremely tight, and I should have changed my grip on that, just like my like Laws told me to. Whenever I went and told him that my bicep didn't feel right, and he goes, "Can you overhand him?" And I went, "Probably, but I don't know how many I can get." And he goes, "Well, you're gonna have to make a decision here." So I made the wrong one. So it's easy enough to laugh about now, but at the time, it was a debrief situation, something I talked to my wife a lot about. So and talked to Laws,
Yeah,
my coach.
yeah. I mean, I found for me personally, like especially with the bad shows, like not talking to somebody, I was just like a fucking mess.
Yeah,
It was awful. It was like I remember what was that? Giants Live 2017. Like I was joint third going into Stones. If I had beat Adam that day, I would have went to Worlds. Didn't beat him, and that ruined me like mentally for a long time. And then I started being able to sort of draw a little bit of not positive from it, or I guess some positive from it, but like that took a long time, and I think it takes a hell of a lot of um, like self reflection, and I don't think we're the best at that as athletes,
no,
to put it mildly.
no, we're very good at being hard on ourselves for no reason or small reasons, and we're very, very good at punishing ourselves, but we are not good at self reflection.
Yeah, you said something there that was really interesting to me, where you said about it being a hobby. Um, because I feel, especially at that top level of the sport, there is a how do I want to word this? There's a like an identity crisis almost, where it's a case of like I'm a strong man, I'm a strong man, I'm a strong man, and that's who I am. Um, and then to add in what you said at the start of this was like, you're a family man, you're a strength athlete, you're a firefighter. Do you feel like there's a danger of like over identifying with one thing, or how does that play into you as a person, and you know what advice would you have for somebody who has some of that, because I certainly did as my younger years. It was a case of I'm a strongman and that's all I am type of thing.
I can only come from the way that I think about things, and I mean, there's times where I don't even feel human sometimes. So my
Is
thought,
that because of work? Sorry to cut you off there.
no, it's
Is
just
that be,
I felt this way for a long time. Like I don't feel like I fit in the puzzle with everybody else. I never have, never really kind of felt like I've always felt like an old soul. Uh,
Mhm.
just never quite fit in with my age group. Never quite fit in with the people around me. I had very few friends growing up, and they were all also old souls. But they could get the best out of me, uh, and I got to live a little whenever I was a young man. So, I'm happy for all that. But to your question, I think the identity crisis in strongman is rampant,
Mhm.
and people get so caught up with the competition, and they think that they're going to become a professional, and they think that somehow is going to pay their bills. Well, I came into strongman and knew nothing. I'm gonna be the first to admit that I have watched like strongest man on earth things and world strongest man competitions and clips on YouTube. I never was interested in who the names were behind the sport. I never and I've never been interested in sports at all. I don't like to watch sports. I enjoy competing,
Mm.
and I like to spend my time exercising, lifting, working towards goals, not watching television. I don't watch a lot of television. So I really feel like after I became a professional, it became very apparent that there was not a lot of money in this sport. And that's was okay for me because I didn't get into this sport for money. I didn't get into
Mm.
firefighting for money. Like people in the firefighting community will tell you that we are not rich. We are only rich in experience. And I've always been okay with that. Like I mentioned earlier, I started my career at $18,000 a year. It was well below the poverty line. By the time that I left that career at Hopkins County, I was only making $21,999 a year. I'd been there for 5 years, and I was an officer. Uh, I had 13 volunteer fire departments I had to look after, and it was a hard job. And we did a lot of cool stuff. I felt like a cowboy whenever I got to show up to work, and I really loved the experience, and I would trade it for anything. Money was the last thing on my mind. I was able to make ends meet. I was able to pay for what I needed. But back to strongman. So I've competed at high levels before in powerlifting, just for a very short amount of time. And obviously, in high school powerlifting, there is no money. So
Mhm.
it was the norm. So fortunately, high school kind of sets you up for that. They don't have money involved in it, and I really think that college has kind of jacked it up here lately, where they're offering these kids money, like actual money. I think it's great to pay for their education, but when you start to really mud it down with a currency and people's expectations, that I think that they get so caught up in what they could make, but it's not realistic, and so they expect those things. And the people in power, or excuse me, the people in strongman, they expect to make it to the top level, and they expect to start getting paid. Well, it's a lot more complicated than that. There's only, I don't know, a 0.5% of the people who can probably pay for their lifestyle with strongman. And it requires a lot more than I ever would have thought. Man, the social media that you need
Yeah.
to get going, and the personality that you need to have, and the time that's committed to it, it's a full time job. It's like I've looked at doing YouTube on my own and all the stuff, and I want to, but I don't know how to fit a third full time job into all this.
It's
I'm so
interesting
strapped for
because, yeah, like I feel, being an older athlete and being in this for quite a long time, that I feel like the invent or the advent of social media has, it's like this double-edged sword
time.
from a perspective of, um, like when I was competing in my younger years, um, 2005, 2006, you just went and competed, and like, okay, you'd get, excuse me, you'd get a little bit of exposure online with like forums and all that sort of stuff, but you weren't seeing these guys competing, you know, or their training on like on a scrollable platform.
Yeah.
It was really, I feel like it was a lot. I feel like part of it, it was more down to earth. Um, like there used to be a forum called Morande Muscle. It was a guy out in Washington. His name was Jesse Morande. He got second at Worlds in 2005, I think it was. And he had this forum, and you'd go on there, and I'm a young kid, and it's like I'm talking to Jesse, I'm talking to Kevin Nee, I'm talking to Travis Ortmeyer, and all these like top level guys. But it was just like a normal conversation, whereas I feel like social media has become this like almost
It's fake.
there's a fakeness to it,
Yeah.
but it's like I feel like it's skewed the expectation. And don't get me wrong, like I think athletes should be paid, and they should be able to make a living from it and all that sort of stuff. But the expectation of it is misplaced at times, I feel.
Yeah. Like I believe
And it
athletes should make money, but I also believe that they should be realistic in what they are going to accomplish
mhm,
and what they have to invest in it. And it is a job. So like you can become a social media manager, you can do all kinds of stuff, you can be a videographer, and you can make that money, but you really have to concentrate on how to, support your family. And that's what I did. So like I would have loved to have started Strongman when I was 21. It'd be fantastic, but I wouldn't be in a position that I am now where I can afford all the travel that Strongman has. I can
Mhm.
afford all the equipment that I want, and I can, I could buy. If my car died tomorrow, I could buy a new car. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of people in those positions, and I feel for them, but you have to work to attain these goals. And I worked at one point. I was working even when I was working in Hopkins County. I was working like 4 jobs. I worked as a paramedic on an ambulance. I worked in the ER. I worked part time at another fire department. I worked my full time fire job. So like
Wow.
that's how I paid for stuff. Like, but there was
Yeah.
no time to be a strongman. There was no time
Mhm.
to compete in CrossFit. When I got on a rock wall, my pay went up by like 2/3, like overnight, or it was more than that. My pay went up like 300%. That's probably the better way to put
Wow.
it. And the first thing I did was I started nixing some jobs. Like I was so
Mhm.
tired of having to. I hate driving an ambulance. I hate being on an ambulance. I will never be on an ambulance again if I ever have to be. I love the fire. I love the fire department. I love going to 911 calls, but I hate the ambulance. Um, and I really feel like this kind of all just caveats in together. But strongmen should concentrate more on supporting their family and doing this stuff secondary instead of doing this primary and having a job secondary. And I see that a lot with some of these athletes. And what ends up happening is they get more and more disappointed. There's more and more stress that's on them. And that stress is what's killing them in the long run. But there's only a handful of people that were able to do it that way, like people like Eddie Hall, who was able to quit his job and then just
Mhm.
happen in. But you're not Eddie Hall. I'm sorry, guys. Like, there's just not that many Eddie Halls around. You're talking about a 0.1% of the population with the correct genetics, the correct mentality, and the ability to get there. That's just not all of us.
No, and I agree. I mean, I feel like for me personally, like I was at a, I was a good age when I was in strongman from a perspective of I didn't have any responsibilities, so it didn't really matter how much money I made. If I could scrape by, I could scrape by, and I was very lucky to be able to do strongman. But the most I ever made in a year was from from competitions was maybe 10 grand, maybe at a stretch.
Yeah,
You know,
I haven't paid
um,
back my investment in strongman. Not paid back,
oh yeah, no, not even close. No,
and the
and
Arnold paid for me for a bunch of stuff, but like there's still expenses there. Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, like for me, I I have a hard time at times looking at, or like I feel like I compare myself to other people, and then I have to pull back and be like, well, dude, like you got to remember, like you moved across the world, you didn't have a consistent job, you haven't started saving really until recently, and blah blah blah. And then I have to pull it back in and be like, well, you still have a good life, like chill the fuck out, you know? Um,
you're a whole different animal. Most people in their lives will never go through the things that you went through to be where you are today.
yeah, you're probably right. I don't see it. I don't, or I mean, okay, I see it, but I don't appreciate that type of thing, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think we all have things in our lives that I think you should all, everybody knows that everybody has a story, right? There's things in
yeah,
everybody's lives that you'll never experience and you'll never understand. But like you have, like, I can't imagine how hard it is to leave your country of origin and go somewhere else and make it.
yeah. Like when I look back, I'm like, oh man, I sort of did something cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like Taylor and I want to move to other countries. Like I want to spend time in other countries with other cultures. But number one, I mean, I love America. I love the opportunities afforded here, and it would be really tough, Ken, to just up and leave here. This is where all our
Hmm.
family is. They're not going to come, and quite frankly, it's hard to get into another country. Like we've looked at, how to
Oh
get
yeah.
dual citizenships and how to do all this
Hmm.
other stuff, and it's not easy. And I don't have the credentials that most
Hmm.
places want. They want you to be, a master's degree or a PhD,
Hmm.
and to have
Yeah,
it.
that's one of the yeah, like that's one of the things that's been sort of hard for me, um, with our son coming along, like thinking about like my mom and like, okay, I need to be really like I got to push hard to make sure there's a lot of involvement there and all that sort of stuff. So like she's coming over for a month
Nice.
in May. So like, and it's just like my birthday's in May as well. As I was saying to my wife Michelle, I was like, this is probably going to be the first birthday I've spent with my mother in like 20 years, which is insane to say. Um,
I
but
don't,
it's like
I don't think it's that.
that's yeah, it's like I'm becoming more cognizant of stuff like that. Like, okay, need to make sure that we're involved, and she's coming. So she's going to be coming over a bunch with that, and she wants to be involved and all that sort of stuff. So it's exciting for me on that one. Um, and it's just I don't know, like I feel like we all go through this sort of identity crisis at times, and have to try and figure out like who we are and what's important and all that sort of stuff. Um, and I feel like sport and work and everything like it all melts together and it all really, you know, it really factors into how you approach life. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, um, like I watch you compete, so like knowing how I was as an athlete, I was a fucking aggressive,
Yeah.
like super aggressive. And you were like this, like the complete opposite. Is very like this, like almost like quiet, very quiet, like undermined, not undermined, like just there's just this confidence that's just it's there, but like you don't. It's almost like you don't say anything about it. If that makes any sense,
I love that you think it's confidence.
it comes across that way.
That's fantastic. I'm glad it does.
I feel that's how it comes across personally. Versus like the sort of like I would almost say that I was performative almost from a perspective of that outward aggression. Like where do you feel that was developed from? Is that do you think feel that's developed from like work and younger self, or where did that come from?
I've never been a showboater. Always been very much felt disrespected by people who showboat, especially for others' expense. And we had a
Mm,
lot of that in high school. We had a lot of that in middle school. Just with they were kids. I look back on it and it's irritating, but it's what kids do. But I
mhm,
never wanted to be like that. So that started young. But I can tell you where it comes now, and it's because of my job. I've seen too much to get amped up about lifting a big weight. That
mm,
is not the exciting part for me. The exciting part for me is that I am performing in front of people, performing to my best of my abilities, and literally me just getting better. That's where most of my excitement comes from. The few times you'll ever see me get excited is because I've done something that I have never done before. And so as time goes on, that's going to happen less and less because
mhm,
there's going to be less personal best as we get older. And I'm 30, about to be 34 now, so I'm well past my prime. But I'm prime and ripe for being strong regardless, and I'm not going to let my
mhm.
age get in the way of that. But firefighting killed that part of me because, man, could you imagine somebody on a fire scene
Yeah.
who puts a little fire out and then goes, "Yeah, yeah, get some." Like it would just be so unprofessional,
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous, a waste of energy, which is always how you tell that somebody's a young fireman is when they waste energy.
Mm,
I don't want to be that. I want to be the professional. I want to be the person that looks confident. I want to be the person that looks like they've done this event 1,000 times already. And so, like, I'm really glad it comes out as confidence because I can tell you the inner turmoil is big. Uh, there's definitely a lot of can I, will I,
mhm,
what's going to happen. And I've had bad moments, man. Sometimes just getting the water and stuff right in the body, like I'm overhydrated. I get a real swimmy head with some of these weights, and you just don't always know what's going to happen whenever you walk out on stage. And I live in a really amped up state. Um, my nervous system's always on. So anytime that I can bring it down and dampen it, I do. And when I'm at
mm,
contests, it's at an all time high because, these are moments that aren't normal. And so anything I can do to help dampen it during the moment, especially before the lift, helps me perform better because I can get so overhyped so quickly
Hmm.
that it would just be a detriment to what I'm doing. So that's the reason for the calmness. That's the reason for the I call it just being chill. Kills a cucumber. But I I just
I
I live in this upper limit of nervous system, and I like being down.
Yeah, and I noticed that now going back to the constant state of amped up type of thing. Um, Going back to like OSG, like it was just so interesting to see like the like I could tell you were on, but you were not. It's just like it's just like that sort of baseline, you know. Like I remember, like I can't remember if it was a police officer or a firefighter, but like you heard a tone over over their radio, and it was like, well,
Yeah, yeah, it made me panic.
yeah, and it's
I wasn't prepared.
like how do you balance that? How do you live with that? I mean,
Well, first off, you try not to drop to the floor, or cry, or whatever. You try to you look for it, and then you understand, and then you got to bring it back down. It's what I do at work.
mm,
We go to the call, wake up in the middle of the night, man. You kick out of bed, and where I got to go where now, and you're figuring it all out. And so,
mm,
I hear sounds and things in the world that I think people would use the term trigger. I don't really like that word. Um, that are reminiscent of sounds that I've heard in my life, that I've heard at work, that I've heard in the bad moments of my life, and
mm,
so it is at its core uh, a post traumatic stress reaction.
yeah,
By no means am I a Vietnam veteran. I've witnessed the PTSD and things that those guys suffered through, and the hatred that they got for what they did, and I'll never be that person. I dropped a pan one time in the Boy Scout camp, and one of the guys, we had a Vietnam vet that was there helping us out, and he hit the floor and stayed on the floor. Like he literally thought that somebody just chunked a grenade in there. And uh, it's my first time ever seeing somebody in that state. And
mm,
fortunately, he was pretty cool, and he was able to talk about it later. And so it was one of my first times to get to talk to somebody about post traumatic stress. I was a young man, probably 16, 17. So getting that understanding at a young age was good. And when I got into the fire service, I never thought it would be me. I thought that I'd been
mm,
through a lot in my life. I thought that seen a lot, done a lot, and that's just that youth mentality that we all have when we're kids. I was invincible, and I now know
yeah,
that that's not true. And so, strongman is the way that I cope. Like that is my
mm,
coping mechanism: is having goals, having ambitions, and progressing in life, in sport, and you just hope that you go out in public and that you don't make a fool of yourself. And I think that there's other firemen that have the same issue that I do. I know there's cops that do. And I've talked about with some people before. Um, we have some really good organizations in the Dallas Metroplex area. They'll send people out to talk to you about these things. We also have employee like people we can call like crisis hotlines if we just need to
mhm,
call and talk. So those options are always available. And then obviously, if I wanted to, I would call. The first person I would call is people that I work with.
yeah,
I was having a hard time with it, but that's why I'm always on because you're listening. You're listening for all these things, and I have a skill set that is useful for keeping people alive. And so I don't like to hoard that for myself when I'm out in public. Uh, I will stop and do CPR for you if you're in a car accident. I will stop and I will help you. Uh, there is some legality to all those things. You have what's called a duty to act, and so that's why firemen and that's why cops and that's why paramedics are always on because they have
mhm,
that duty to act. Like so, it's one of the reasons we got in those careers is because we wanted to learn a skill that could be beneficial to the world. And so that's the way you share it. But you pay a cost for that, and that is that you're always on. Your nervous system's always waiting for that next CPR call or that next person who's choking. But we're out amongst you, and you should feel safe.
Do you ever feel there's a lack of appreciation of people in your profession?
As far as like the public,
Yeah, like, obviously if you're sitting here willing to help somebody,
no, I absolutely. I'm gonna try to say this the nice way. I absolutely hate when people thank me for my service. I love my job, and I chose to be there, and I chose to stay there, and I really appreciate the thought behind it. But at the end of the day, it is a job, and it is a choice to show up to.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of people in the service don't really like that. We appreciate it in the sense of it's so respectful. Like,
Yeah.
thank you to all the people who do that. But for the love of God, stop putting us on the spot. It's so uncomfortable, and just talk to us. Like, just say hi. That's all we want. We want to interact with the public. I'd rather you just stop, say hi, introduce yourself, ask us about us. How long have you been in the fire service? Which station do you run out of? What types of apparatus do you have? I've got a fireboat at my fire station. I always think that's really cool, and people think
Mm.
it's really interesting because you don't find that very often in other departments. So I think that's the way that we would like to go about it. But I never felt that the public was not on our side. Anytime we've done any kind of vote or gone and backed some public person, if we do it publicly, then the public usually sides with us.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, because I've heard stuff like, like obviously police officers, different story.
Yes.
Um, but
Especially-
I know I have some friends in that line, and they've dealt with some stuff where it's like, there's a lack of appreciation type of thing.
It kind of falls back to I was telling you that firemen kind of hide. And that's what
Hmm.
we do.
Yeah.
People call 911. We show up. We help those individuals, that household, whatever it is, and then we go back to our station. Like that's where
Mhm.
we stay. It's safe
I
there.
mean, it makes complete sense, dude. I mean,
But
yeah, no shit.
Popo, they've got to drive around. Their shifts are 8 to 12 hours,
Hmm.
and they're going to be in a car that whole time. They're going to interact with so many public people. A lot of them have to go out and get food to eat. So like that's
Yeah.
2 to 3 times of interactions that day that they have to go in and talk to somebody, and there's people around them. And obviously, in this day and age, police are not looked at as favorably as they were in the past. But it still stands that there's good and bad in both professions.
Hmm.
Uh, the only thing you can hope is that these organizations find the people who don't belong and they tell them to get lost.
Yeah. Going back to um the shift length and the being in the firehouse, I'm assuming I'm right in saying that you're on 24-hour shifts.
I work 48-hour shifts now.
Jesus. So then how does that
I love
I was going to say, how does that play into training and like a contest prep and all that sort of stuff?
It's hard. For this contest prep specifically, I made sure that I took a lot of time off because this one was like set for the year. This is my big one for the year that I know is
Yeah.
on the docket. I took as much time off as I could. So I basically burned all my time off for the year for the Arnold. And it's been helpful. It's hard. My fire department's not very receptive to my lifting. I've been told before many times by admin that I'm lifting too heavy and I'm damaging the station and I'm putting myself in harm's way, and that's not fair to the public, and that I wouldn't be covered by workers' comp, which is absurd. Why would I ever want workers' comp, anyways? Uh,
Hmm.
just a lot of goofy things and things that I don't agree with. So, I try to really be respectful of the department. I try to be respectful of the time that I spent up there, and I do a lot of my conditioning and cardio at work, and I do a lot of stretching, and I do a lot of just the small things there. That's where I
Hmm.
try to go and get that work done. But I do spend a third of my time at that fire station, so there is some times where, especially in preps, I have to do some of the big things. So like I was doing
Yeah.
my deadlift blocks at work because they're very low. They don't feel really like damaging, I guess. So like I can do a deadlift workout and then work a structure fire, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
if I'm doing like a squat workout, that one's a little harder. So like I'm not going to say that I couldn't do that because I've done it many times in my career.
Hmm.
But I try not to pick the things that are the most damaging to me and the things that are the hardest for me to recover from. I try to be mindful of my training at work, but I also always make sure that I do something that is for the job, and that is a lot of cardio. I do hours of cardio when I'm at work. I love to
Mm.
climb on the stair climber. I absolutely despise running, but I have to do it every year for our physical fitness test. And then they've recently bought us a rower, and rowing is my all-time favorite cardio conditioning style workout. I've had one in my house for more than 10 years, but they bought one there, and a lot of the guys like to compete on it, so we can all send times out at like 2,000 meter
Mhm.
rows and see who can row the best. But those guys can't beat me, man. There's
I love
there's
it.
nobody on this earth, and this is the one place that I'm going to just be like kind of a butt. There's nobody on this earth that's more conditioned at 335 pounds than I am.
Do you feel that's something that's lacking in strongman?
That is lacking in all sports.
Hmm. I'd agree with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it gets put to the back for sport specificity, and I think it should be at the forefront, and it should be used not only as a conditioning tool for the heart, but also for a recovery tool from the training. I think that's where a lot of people miss out.
How do you implement it? What's your go-to
It
typically?
depends. So it depends on the cycle that I'm in. But like, let's just talk about for right now. So I'm in the lower intensity states. I also, I maintain this stuff too for my job because like I don't want to die. I
Yeah,
want to have
yeah,
I want to
no
have
doubt.
a gas tank to do what I have to do to get myself out of a situation. So that comes up a lot. But right now, I like to base things off of heart rate, and so I'll try to
Mhm.
keep 150 or less, and that might be a 20-minute row or a 20-minute assault bike or a 20-minute uh, stairmaster. So, but before that, I was trying to hit zone 4 and zone 5 levels before the prep started, and so I was doing a Norwegian 4x4, which is 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off for 4 rounds, and I was doing that on the rower, and I was doing that. I think my best one I rode was a 147 for 4 minutes, and I was hitting about 180 heart rates.
Jesus.
Yeah, so like I try to find those top end times too, and I try to train in those because when you go and you work a fire, once you put your gear on and once you grab all your tools, I'm about 100 pounds heavier than I am normally, so
Mm.
I'm a little over 400 pounds, and my heart rate usually hits about 220 to 225 in the first 5 to 10 minutes of that structure fire, just from the excitement and the
Yeah, the adrenaline.
yeah. So
Damn.
that's why firefighters have so many cardiovascular incidences is because your heart rate hits a 220, and that is like max.
Mm.
You're considered,
Yeah, I didn't actually think about that.
yeah, you're considered to be an SVT, which is supraventricular tachycardia, which is a life-threatening illness uh, whenever you're in those levels. So your heart almost can't function. But
Huh.
train it.
Yeah.
If you train it, it's better and it's more adapted to doing that. But it is, I find it very difficult to get in those zone 4 and zone 5 areas, and I can only get there for a couple minutes at a time. And I attest that to being in good shape and having a healthy,
Yeah.
strong heart. So I think it's good on one end, but it is kind of a pain in the butt when I'm trying to hit that 185 or 188 range. I just
Yeah, you just can't get there.
sorry for
Interesting.
the lighting. I'm losing the sun.
You're good, dude. You're good. I won't take up much of your time anyway, so I'll let you wrap it up.
No, don't wrap it up.
Where Oh, dude, no. You gotta train, you gotta do whatever. I've taken enough of your time.
Oh, the day.
I'm sure it's time for another meal. Where can people find you? Where can they find the new shirts? What's the plan with those?
Man, I'm so behind on everything. If you watch my Instagram, I think it's a Burton 428. That's where I'm going to try and do like a quick run for a week or two, so I can actually send some out if anybody wants to wear them at the Arnold. I'd love to see them. I have another shirt that actually has my name on it. That was really hard for me to make. I don't like promoting myself that much, but it would be nonsense for me not to do it leading up into
Mhm.
this. So I have a couple hundred of those shirts being made right now. So if you want one that says the world Andrew Burton, the world's strongest firefighter, give me just another couple weeks on those. But I will put something on Instagram at some point that if you want to send me a message, I will try to figure out how to send it to you. They're $30 each, and I think I'll do $5 flat for shipping. I have no clue how much that's going to cost. Uh, I'm trying to get a YouTube channel up and going. I'm not going to promise anything, especially not how much content would come out or if it will be any good. So far, it's been boring me, so I haven't been able to make myself put it on that channel. So I'm working on
Okay.
it. I'm trying to find people to help me, and it's not going well. But we'll get there eventually.
You'll get there. You'll get there, dude. Is Instagram the best place?
Instagram's the best place to get a hold of me.
All right, cool. Well, I will tag you and we'll make sure we get this out there. Thank you so much for being my first guest back for the Iron Edge. Good luck at the Arnold. I'm very, very excited to see you on that main stage.
Thank you, Ken. I really
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
you on.
Of course, man. Yeah. Hey, thank you again.